Serial killers are fascinating characters to center films around, and there are several underrated releases from the 1980s that haven't received enough love over the years. Audiences continue to be drawn to serial killer stories, both those inspired by real-life murderers and those that are entirely fictional. The actions and psychology of these characters allow filmmakers to explore a range of unsettling and thought-provoking themes, including those that examine audiences' growing obsession with these figures in the media. Slashers were big in the 80s, and as one might expect, several serial killer movies land in the subgenre of horror and follow a relentless killer collecting their victims one after the other. However, serial killers also work well within slower thrillers that take their time to build suspense. Many underrated 80s serial killer movies are overlooked due to their mediocre critical reception or their intense depictions of violence, but are still worthy of attention decades later. 10. Calendar Girl Murders, 1984. Directed by William A. Graham. Sharon Stone smiles at a man standing in front of her. Before becoming a queen of the screen in the 90s, Sharon Stone starred in the TV film Calendar Girl Murders as photographer Cassie Bascombe. The ABC film sees successful publisher Richard Trainer, Robert Culp, celebrating the release of a calendar featuring images of beautiful women. However, trouble starts when the models begin dying in the order of the year. Detective Dan Stoner, Tom Skerritt, works quickly on the case to prevent the killer from making their way to the December model. The premise of Calendar Girl Murders is unique, and the mystery throughout the film is surprisingly effective. Calendar Girl Murders isn't the strongest made-for-TV film, but is certainly a product of its time with its stylized horror and borderline campy performances. So long as audiences don't go into the film with high expectations, it's easy to walk away satisfied. 9. Blackout, 1985. Directed by Douglas Hickox. A detective wearing a trench coat and black cap sits in a car. Being a made-for-TV film, Blackout has its limitations and isn't able to be as dark and twisted as other serial killer films mentioned. Still, the underrated psychological thriller is worthy of a watch for its decent scares and entertaining performances. The film sees a homicide detective, Richard Widmark, investigating the brutal murders of the Vincent family, though the patriarch he suspects killed them goes missing. When another man, Keith Carradine, involved in an unrelated accident is unable to remember his past and undergoes multiple facial reconstructive surgeries, the detective is led to believe he may be the Vincent family killer. Blackout appears to be largely predictable at the start, but the film's numerous plot twists keep audiences guessing and unsure of what Widmark's character will discover next. 8. Pieces, 1982. Directed by Juan Piquer Simon. Letitia Marfil stands in the corner of a shower with a horrified expression on her face. Though the Spanish-American slasher Pieces has flaws, its ability to entertain audiences is not one of them. The film revolves around an unknown serial killer who attacks various women on a college campus in Boston. The killer keeps a piece of each victim's body to create a horrific sort of jigsaw puzzle. Pieces has remnants of both giallo films and standard American slashers but doesn't add much to either genre. The film's narrative and dialogue have been picked apart by audiences and critics alike, but it has still managed to earn a cult following over the years. Pieces creates a substantial amount of suspense as the death count quickly increases and the identity of the killer isn't immediately revealed. The movie also has enough gore and violence to satisfy audiences who prefer their slashers to be brutal and bloody. 7. White of the Eye, 1987. Directed by Donald Cammell. David Keith sits at a kitchen table smirking with a beer bottle in his hand. Unlike a few of the other serial killer movies mentioned, White of the Eye doesn't aim to entertain audiences with a suspenseful mystery and an abundance of shocking deaths. Instead, the film provides a look at the life of a suspected serial killer, allowing audiences to better understand what led him to act violently later on in life. In Arizona, a string of similar murders take place and Detective Charles Mendoza, Art Evans, suspects local audio technician Paul White, David Keith, has something to do with it. White of the Eye is wonderfully stylish and is held up well by the performances of its cast. Keith is a strong lead and delivers a great performance as the everyman character with a dangerous, hidden life, making the film's plot twist work that much better. Kathy Moriarty also gives a memorable performance as Paul's wife Joan, who is left dealing with the actions of her mysterious husband. 6. Angst, 1983. Directed by Gerald Cargill. A bloody Erwin Leder sits in the driver's seat of a car. A handful of disturbing serial killer movies aim to immerse audiences in their twisted narratives by making them complicit in their killer's actions. One of these films is the Austrian thriller Angst. The film follows an unnamed serial killer recently released from prison. Feeling the urge to commit a murder, the killer wanders around and breaks into a home. The killer attacks the family, and it's extremely difficult to watch at times. Angst is bloody, but it isn't as graphic or nauseating as other horror or serial killer movies. However, the camera work and use of narration from the killer bring audiences much closer to his actions than most other films in the genre do. The film is truly one of a kind, though it has been heavily compared to Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer, which came out a few years later, due to the way it invites audiences into the life of a killer.